you discovered 1031 exchanges, you decided to buy and hold, it sounds like. What type of investments were you investing in?
Well, we did all sorts of different types, but typically we initially stayed with single family rentals,
Okay.
small multifamily rentals. And then when we ended up in Florida, it was like such a ripe ground for vacation rentals.
Mm.
So we got in at a time where we could buy single family rentals on the water with a boat dock in the back for people are going to gag when they hear this $250,000, $300,000. And we would rent the houses on weekly rentals. And then we would also rent the boats. So we were generating basically double income off of every house. And this was so early. Well, they call themselves Verbo now, but back in the day it was VRBO. And we were their initial clients in Southwest Florida. Our pictures were on the front page of that listing area for that region. So we hired a manager who managed them for us because obviously we were not going to be geographically bound. But once the purchase was completed, you've got a manager, you've got your tradespeople, cleaners, carpenters, boat captains. You can run these things pretty smoothly from a distance and manage the manager.
Yeah.
And that cut our effort down quite a bit. But what was cool is that what the 1031 exchange allowed us to do was to first of all get from Colorado, where there ain't no ocean front.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, that was kind of the funniest thing was my wife's from Minnesota. There's no ocean there. I'm a Kansas farm boy. There's no ocean there. We met in Colorado. There's no ocean there. Where did this come from?
Yeah.
We tried to think of the cheapest way we could live without having to be bound by a bunch of expenses. And we thought, well, a sailboat, that's got to be free. Yeah, let's go buy a sailboat without knowing anything about it. But the 1031 exchange allowed us to, while we were in Colorado, we would buy, we would hold, we would sell. Every time we sold, we would do a 1031 exchange. So all of the profit and the tax stayed with us. And then as we got ready to move to water, we did 1031 exchanges and moved all of our portfolio to Connecticut to get to water where we could get the boat. Well, because you're always buying at least as much as you sell, and because you're not just using the profit, but the profit plus the tax that you deferred on the last sale, it becomes kind of a composite of compounding interest. So that pretty soon you're making money the rest of your life off of money that you actually owe to the government.
Mm.
And so that was the transition that we made with one huge bonus. And that is, are you familiar with the primary residence exemption?
Yes. But you can
Section
explain it.
121 says that if you buy a house, live in it for 2 years, you sell it, then as a married couple, you get to take the first $500,000 of profit tax-free. Tax-free. Wow. If I could tell anybody to do one thing that's going to make your life absolutely the best in 30 years, it's go buy a house, live in it, and when you're ready to move, sell it and take the money tax-free. Do that by yourself 8 to 10 times is how many times you'll typically move. And that could be anywhere from $2 to $3 million of profit tax-free. Now, if you make 10% off of your investments and you've got $2 million of tax-free money over the course of 30 years, doesn't that mean that you're retiring on $200,000 a year without doing anything other than just living in the property? Now, results differ for different people, I get it, but that's the promise. Now, the way that we used it, you can convert investment property from investment into your primary residence. So when we did the 1031 exchanges to Connecticut, one of the houses that we bought with our 1031 exchange we ended up converting into our next primary residence. And then once we lived in it long enough, then again, now this is prior to 2008. Back then, you could get all the profit tax-free. So back then, all that money became tax-free when we sold it. Well, that money went into the buy the boat kitty. And the rest of the 1031 exchanges went to building the portfolio to live off the rentals. By the time we had done those conversions 4 or 5 times, we had enough to buy the boat with tax-free dollars.
Wow.
And then the vacation rentals provided our living expenses.
Wow. So you just pick the property then, like in Connecticut, that was the most probable to have the biggest appreciation possible, so that you could then tap into, which I know is a concern for a lot of people. They're like, well, I can't tap into the money then or get access to the money because I'm keep rolling it over into new investments, but you could actually liquidate a big chunk of that tax-free money then.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that has actually become the retirement plan for a number of my investors. So they do what I call the ebb and flow of the 1031. When you're young and energetic, you grow, 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 grow. So you sell 1, you buy 2, you sell 2, you buy 4. You can change geographies. So you can sell in California, which is usually going to be a high-priced asset. Go buy in Kansas City, where you can get a large number of properties for that same price. So you're building and building and building. But then you reach a point where you start to get a little tired and you start to consolidate. So you sell 2 and go buy 1, but that 1 is going to be easier to manage. Or you sell several, buy a multifamily property with on-site management. Convert, turn 1 into your primary residence, take a portion of that tax-free. Those are all different ways of doing it. I have one client who used his 1031 exchange to buy 3 identical beachfront condos on St. Pete Beach. Same floor and everything. They're basically just about right next door to each other. So this is his retirement plan, Kirby. It's genius. He's the one that came up with it first, by the way. I didn't have to tell him even. So he converted the first one and moved into it. Now it's his primary residence. When he had owned it for 5 years and had lived in it for 2 out of those 5, he could sell it. And he did, and he took 2/5 or 40% of the profit became tax-free. I said, well, you're still going to pay a little bit of tax, right? He goes, yep, I am. But Dave, if I was going to have to deliver pizzas or bag groceries, I'm paying tax on that money too. So I'd rather pay tax on the money where I'm just sitting on my back porch drinking coffee. Now, where do you think he moved, Kirby?
Next door.
Yeah. They're planning on living in that one for 8 years because they'll have owned it for 10 and they're going to live in it for 8 out of 10. So they will get then 80% of the gain tax-free. And then they'll move into the third one. What a retirement.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what the 1031 exchange can allow you to do throughout your life. You get to live off the rental income. You get to live off more rental income because you're buying bigger, and you're getting to live off rental income that is being subsidized by the federal and state government. Because instead of paying the tax, they're letting you keep it for your benefit. So instead of paying Uncle Sam's paying me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think a lot of people that I talk to have heard about this 1031 exchange thing, and they're like, well, it's just a way to kind of defer taxes, and they don't understand that there's actually strategies that you can employ depending on what your goal is, and get real specific with these different strategies to, to use this tool to really, like you said, I mean, leverage way beyond what you could if you're paying taxes every time you sold a property. So,
Yeah.
What what so if somebody's sitting on a property and they've got a whole bunch of equity in it and they're trying to decide, should I sell it and do a 1031 into something else, or should I refinance it and tap into that equity? How do you help walk them through what decision makes the most sense for them?
That is a great question, because that's the real crux of the whole matter. And what I do is I simply steer people back to that property. Don't ever look at a gadget that you want to use. Look at the performance of what you've got, and then say, how do I need to tweak what I've got? So I don't go buy, a cool radio for my car when it needs a muffler.
Yeah.
So I don't want to use a 1031 exchange if that's what's not needed. But the best way to do it is to go back and look at that property. And first of all, say, is it performing well for me? Well, if it's performing well, then I've got to take the next step and say, okay, what if I refinance? How is it going to perform? Because a good performer now is not necessarily a good performer if you owe 3 times as much money at 7 or 8%. So you've got to really stress test that. And then you've got to look and say, okay, if I refinance, I'm not going to get 100% of the money anyways. I'm going to have to leave 25% in. Is there something that I could do with that additional 25%? Because that's what the 1031 exchange allows you to do, is to take all of the equity into your new property. So I'll have people many times who will decide, I think a refinance is best. But then I have a lot of people, especially now, who are saying, no, given that interest rates are doing what they're doing, I think I'm better off doing a 1031, because there's another cool little tactic that they can use. And it's what I call recession proofing your portfolio. So let's say I've got a property that I could sell for $500,000, and it's got $300,000 in debt. My responsibility, if I want to defer all tax, is I must purchase $500,000 of real estate using all of my proceeds, $200,000. Or let's say it was $250,000. Well, I could go buy one property for $200,000 cash. Now, when I do that, I don't have to worry about debt. I'm not about interest rates. And if anything goes bad, all I've got to do is keep the lights on, and that property is safe. I then take my proceeds, the other $50,000, use that as a down payment. So I'm still getting the additional arbitrage of interest. I bought as much as I sold. I used all the proceeds. I completed my 1031 exchange. The tenants are still paying the amortization of the loan. What's not to like about that? And that's an example of using the sale of one to go buy several.